Good afternoon, students. Now, this particular sonnet written by Shakespeare, that is Remembrance, in this particular uh, sonnet you don't find the topic, the title, so I'll just tell you it's the Remembrance. And the notes, because I have already explained this particular sonnet to you earlier also. So today I will be, just because some of the students had asked a few notes on it, so I'll just I have taken these notes, downloaded it from www.letschart.com. Okay, so I have given you the reference. So this is again a sonnet of 14 lines, and this sonnet 30, the number 30, was written by in the English poet and playwright William Shakespeare. First published in 1609 as part of a sequence of 154 sonnets, Sonnet 30 was most likely written in the early 1590s. At this time, Shakespeare was a young playwright recently arrived in London. Despite its author's youth and inexperience, the poem broods on life's disappointments. For the speaker of the poem, even thinking about such sorrows brings them back with all their original pain and power. Only one thing offers solace and comfort in the face of such pain: the love the speaker feels for a dear friend. Now, when I'm silently reflecting on things that have happened in the past, I feel disappointed that I failed to get the things I wanted. Old sorrows feel new again, and I complain about how I wasted my precious time. Then can I weep heavily, even though I rarely cry? For dear friends who have died, I can weep again. For lost loves I had once gotten over, I can complain about things that have been destroyed. Then I get angry about old insults, and I complain about one bad thing after another. A sad tale of things I have already complained about, which feel as painful now as they did before. But if I stop and think about you, dear friend, everything I have lost returns to me, and all my sorrows end. Now, see, as we have already read earlier, went to the sessions of sweet silent thought. Now, see, there is alliteration also. It's very rich in figures of speech. I summon upon remembrance of thing past. I sigh the lack of many a thing I sought, and with old woes new wail, my dear times waste. Then can I drown an eye unused to flow, for precious friends hid in death's deathless, endless night. So naturally, he is very much in remembrance of his friend who is dead. Okay, now in Sonnet 30, the speaker rehearses all the injuries and disappointments of life: dead friends, lost pleasures, squandered opportunities. For the speaker, neither memory nor time itself diminishes the pain of these losses. Just to think about them brings them back in their full power and difficulty. Indeed, the speaker suggests that memory itself is a powerful source of pain. Just to remember again, so it gives him the same pain. So the same wound, it's the same hurt, injury. So the speaker of Sonnet 30 has a lot of regrets and disappointments. He is recapitulating the same things again and again. Okay? And as soon as, so see, you can find out, there is an autobiographical note in this poem. And as soon as the speaker starts to reminisce about things past, these regrets and disappointments come flocking in, overwhelming the speaker. So he feels the same kind of feeling and emotions. The speaker broods over the lack of many a thing I sought. In other words, about missed opportunities. The speaker also weeps over old friends who are long dead. So, to quote, then can I drown an eye unused to flow, for precious friends hid in deathless, dateless night. So, unquote. The speaker grieves lost loves too. Love is long since cancelled, woo. The first 12 lines of the poem thus constitute a long, exhaustive list of all the things the speaker grieves and regrets. Strikingly, these disappointments and sorrows don't seem to have faded with time. Time usually takes the sting out of grief and disappointment, but that's not the case for this speaker, because time has not, in a way, time heals, but as soon as he thinks about that particular incident, about his friends, about his love, so he cannot control himself. So time also here, sometimes time is a healer, but here, see, time usually takes the sting out of grief and disappointment, but that's not the case for this speaker. The speaker no sooner thinks of some for bemoaned mourn, then the speaker has to quote new pay as if not paid before. In other words, the speaker endures the pain all over again, and it feels just as fresh and sharp as before. It is as though no time has passed at all. So he comes to the same memory. So the first 12 lines of the poem are thus dark and full of despair. The speaker occupies a world in which no one ever really heals, where hurt and pain last forever, uh, without subsiding or becoming bearable. And reflecting on the past, remembering it only brings that pain back with all its power and difficulty. Now, see the power of love. So, Sonnet 30 spends most of the poem in despair, obsessively meditating on past disappointments, regrets, and sorrows. The speaker can't find any relief. Even the passage of time doesn't heal these wounds. That is why the poem is being entitled Remembrance. It's all going in past. Even in present, you are going in past. That means naturally it gives you pain. So you have to be in present, as the modern theory says. As we discuss in this guide's theme entry on the pain of memory, remembering these griefs is like enduring their pain all over again. But in the final two lines of the poem, the speaker finally announces that there is something that makes up for all these losses and disappointments. Okay, now what is that? So, all the speaker has to think about thee, a dear friend, and all losses are restored and sorrows end. So, see the last, I just will read out the last two lines of the sonnet. But if the while I think on thee, dear friend, all losses are restored and sorrows end. So, sort of, paradox is there. He was lost in thoughts, but again he says, my everything is restored back to me. That means I can bear that pain. So that is the main thing. He has consoled himself. Okay, he says sonnet 30 on its own doesn't tell the reader who the dear friend is or what kind of relationship the dear friend has with the speaker. It could be read simply as a poem in praise of the transformative power of friendship, which alone, it seems, can heal the wounds that life inflicts. But in the broader context of Shakespeare's 154 sonnets, it's clear who this dear friend is. He's the beautiful young man whom Shakespeare speaker obsessively quotes and praises in sonnets 1 to 126. And it was his patron friend. Shall I compare the last poem which I discussed with you was also in praise of the his friend. Okay, so he has accepted. In other words, the speaker of this poem, if the reader takes the poem in the broader context of the sequence, isn't saying that friendship makes things better. Rather, the speaker is insisting that love, passionate, erotic love between two people, supplies all the pleasure, hope, and solace necessary to survive life's disappointments and sorrow. So, the last two lines, he ends the sonnet in a very affirmative note. There is a, what you say, he ends in a positive tone. He says, if I think on you. So, he has accepted. See, the power of acceptance has come here. Dear friend, all losses are restored and sorrows end. Yes, so previously he was regretting. okay, regretting the death. But now he says, my all sorrows, all losses end as soon as I remember you and your goodness. Okay, so here I come to an end to this particular note. Thank you, students. Thank you for your patience.